It's been a few days since I covered the new voice memories added to the Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild, where, by connecting the game to the Switch mobile app, you can listen to Princess Zelda talk about locations in the world.
When I heard Father announce that the knight chosen by the sword that seals the darkness was Link, I felt anything but calm inside.
Tears of the Kingdom's Switch 2 edition of course features this same mode, only with even more new content. Not only are there 150 voice memories from Zelda, from the perspective of her journey across the kingdom after Breath of the Wild, there are 35 memories from Master Koga, chronicling his arrival in the depths, and 50 memories from King Raaru found in the sky, apparently recorded during a pilgrimage long ago. So, just like last time, I'm not going to cover every single memory in the game. If you want to read through them, check the video description for a link. Instead, I'm going to pick 15 of my favourites and discuss any lore revelations they bring. Let's get into it. After completing the tutorial dungeons on the Great Sky Island, Link steps out onto a broken pathway, suspended behind the Temple of Time. Here he finds a stone altar, and floating above it, a golden orb of light. It's through this light that Link is able to send the decayed Master Sword back through time into the hands of Zelda, who stands at the same spot, thousands of years in the past. Previously, it was assumed that it was Zelda's power alone that had managed to pull the sword that seals the darkness back through time, but this wasn't explained in-game. Now, however, one of Raaru's voice memories offers some clarity.
This altar is considered the most holy place in the temple, and it is where we give offerings as part of our prayers for a bountiful, peaceful world. I have heard ancient legends that it could interact with a sacred power, allowing travel back and forth through time. Though, how this was done is a mystery to me.
So it seems that the Temple of Time itself is partially responsible for this time travel, interacting with Zelda's sacred power to enable this miraculous feat. Which is fitting. Many of the other Zonai temples are able to channel their respective elements in some way, like the Stormwind Ark churning the air and making it easier for the Rito to fly, or the Water Temple functioning as the source of Hyrule's water. It only makes sense for the Temple of Time to also have an innate ability to control time itself. Another interesting comment from Raaru is made about the frozen region in the east of the Great Sky Island. These snowy peaks are apparently not natural, they're the result of Zonai climate engineering.
It was here that we used the capabilities of frost emitters to create a permanently snowy region. By encircling the island in cold air, we created an ideal place to test the durability of constructs and Zonai devices. I'll always remember the look of wonder on Sonia's face the first time we came here.
So apparently, frost emitters, the Zonai devices shaped like dragon heads that emit an icy breath, were used to cool a region of this place for testing purposes. This is an odd little detail, which is interesting in itself, but becomes even more so when paired with one of Zelda's voice memories in Breath of the Wild.
Past this gate is a snowy landscape, cold enough for one to freeze there. The area is a place where heroes can test their skills, but the landscape is clearly not a natural phenomenon. Perhaps some ancient technology we have yet to learn about is being used here.
This implies that Mount Hylia on the Great Plateau, the area that was, of course, once the capital of Raaru's Kingdom of Hyrule, is an artificial snowscape created using frost emitters just like its counterpart in the sky. So every time during the tutorial you've fallen into the frozen river here and died, it was Raaru's fault. Another of Raaru's voice memories I find interesting is the one at Lightcast Island, where, in the present, Link must solve a puzzle using light and mirrors to access a shrine. Raaru says,
"This island is a training site for those who carry the power of light. By practicing at length with this power, one can grow strong enough to overcome great evil." To recall all the times I had visited this place in my youth.
Raaru's power of light is one of the most interesting aspects of his character, an ability that can oppose the darkness of the Demon King. So it's interesting to learn that Raaru wasn't born having complete control over this sacred power. Just like Zelda did under the tutelage of Sonia, Raaru had to train his innate ability and learn how to control it. And he did so here on Lightcast Island. The disappearance of the ancient Shika technology between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom was one of the most debated aspects of the sequel's story. Of course, Shika Tech was everywhere in the first game. The Divine Beasts, the Guardians, the Shika Slate, the Shrine of Resurrection, the Shika Towers, all relics from this mysterious ancient people, designed to help fight against the Calamity. And it seemed like this ancient technology would remain in Hyrule long after the Calamity's defeat. Breath of the Wild ends with Princess Zelda noting that there's been a fault with Divine Beast Varuta that she intends to see to. So it seems quite strange that Tears of the Kingdom, a game set only a handful of years after Breath of the Wild, features no Shika technology. Well, that's not quite true. There's the Purapad and the Skyview Towers, but that's it. The Divine Beasts, Shrines, Towers, even the Shrine of Resurrection itself have apparently disappeared, and there isn't a single line of dialogue in the game explaining why. Well, Zelda's voice memories do give us an explanation, such as it is.
It seems that when the Calamity was defeated, all of the ancient relics here at the Hiteno Ancient Tech Lab turned to dust and disappeared. All that remains are replicas of the originals, and with those gone, these are even more valuable. They will doubtlessly help tell future generations of the history of Hyrule.
So there's the reason the Shika technology turned to dust. This is only slightly better than them vanishing with no explanation at all, but it's still an explanation nonetheless. And it is interesting that the remaining Shika technology, like that at the Ancient Tech Labs and presumably the Purapad too, are all replicas, not original. In this light, it seems likely that the Shika technology was designed this way, to aid Hyrule in defeating the Calamity and disappear once it was no longer needed. This, of course, raises further questions, such as why it didn't disappear after it was used to suppress the ancient Calamity 10,000 years ago. Maybe it somehow sensed the imminent awakening of Ganondorf and the upheaval. Despite the disappearance of the Shika technology also meaning the disappearance of the broken Guardian shells that littered Breath of the Wild's world, Tears of the Kingdom's voice memories do provide some interesting new information on the Great Calamity, about Hyrule's panicked struggle against these autonomous machines. For example, we know from Breath of the Wild that Akala Citadel was where much of the Hyrulean military made its final stand, when a fortress once thought to be impregnable fell to the Guardian assault. In the present day, it is little more than a ruin, a great tombstone marking the site at which the core of Hyrule's army died. Behind Akala Citadel is the Torin Wetland, a basin filled with countless autumnal trees, and, in Breath of the Wild, nearly as many Guardian hulls. Zelda reveals more information on this machine graveyard.
Torin Wetland was once littered with the broken remains of countless Guardians, though there are no longer any traces of them. I imagine the wetlands reduced the Guardians' mobility, making it impossible for them to avoid each other's attacks. No doubt Akala owes thanks to the quick thinking of soldiers from the Citadel for this. If the Guardians hadn't been so hindered, the Akala region would have suffered more damage.
So Zelda reveals a tactic used by the soldiers that we previously weren't aware of. Much like the Battle of Agincourt, the Hyruleans seemingly guided the stream of Guardians coming from the castle into this wetland, where their heavy armor became a liability and they began to get stuck in the mud, destroying each other in the inevitable crossfire. To me, the details of the Great Calamity are so fascinating, and this is a brilliant little side story that further details that tragic night. West of here is the military training camp, now little more than rotting wooden posts, slowly being swallowed by the bog. However, Zelda's voice memories explain that it, too, had a role to play during the Great Calamity.
This was an important training camp in the days before the Calamity. It is said that when the Calamity occurred, all of the veteran soldiers had been deployed and only trainees remained here. Despite their inexperience, the brave trainees worked together and defeated a Guardian.
And again, while all of the Guardians have vanished by Tears of the Kingdom, if we visit this location in Breath of the Wild, we can indeed find the broken hulls of defeated Guardians among the training camp. 2 of them, as well as a third, which is, less broken. Like with the Akala Citadel memory, this serves to colour in the events of the Calamity, a tragic story of young soldiers who were not yet ready for war, banding together to defeat an insurmountable foe, though likely facing defeat themselves not long after. South of here, at the Raaru settlement ruins, we learn of another tragic battle that took place during the Calamity Ganon's assault. The town is almost entirely destroyed, and it's one of the locations in which Zelda has built a memorial dedicated to the souls who lost their lives.
Although the soldiers at the training camp fought back, this settlement was burned to the ground by a single rampaging Guardian. The loose ground has left little trace of the heroic battle they waged. I pray their brave spirits have found peace with Goddess Hylia.
From the voice memories in Breath of the Wild, we learn that this is the oldest settlement in Hyrule, named after Hyrule's first king. Yet, for all its importance and history, the hamlet met an unceremonious end under the shunting legs of corrupted guardians. It's worth noting how Zelda prays that the brave spirits of the dead found peace with the goddess Hylia, which is, I believe, the first time we've heard of this deity playing a role in the afterlife in the Hylian religion. Speaking of the lost souls of the dead, one of Zelda's voice memories refers to these memorials and their purpose.
A memorial. It is said that spirits who are weighed down with regret when they pass on sink deep beneath the ground and wander in search of light. I will place similar memorials at scenes of great loss and pray they will bring light to those wandering souls.
Directly below these memorial stones, in the depths, Link will find huge rock piles, atop which 3 ghosts float, eerily in the dark. These spectral figures resemble Hyrulean soldiers, so we can assume that they are the spirits of those who lost their lives during the Great Calamity. As Zelda explains, their souls are pulled by the weight of their regrets down into the depths, perhaps the regrets of, in their eyes, failing to defend their kingdom. Some of my favourites of the new voice memories aren't grand revelations about the lore, but smaller character moments. For example, in Zelda's bedroom.
My room. I spent far less time here than I did in my study. That fact may have surprised my attendants, as I often closed the bed curtains to hide the fact I had once again slipped away to continue my research.
Which I can fully imagine, with King Rome adamant that Zelda should focus only on awakening her sealing powers to oppose the impending calamity. I can absolutely see her sneaking away in the dead of night to tinker with Shika machines or pore over ancient books. In a similar vein is Flavor Memories, which unlocks at the Marbet village ruins.
The ruins of Marbet village. It was the farm closest to the castle, and I would often visit it incognito. They always shared far more food than I could possibly eat, and I remember that they treated their animals like members of their family. I imagine no one here fled alone when the time came.
Again, this tells of Zelda sneaking away from the castle, perhaps wearing a cloak to disguise her true identity, hiding from the weight of the responsibility being the divine princess pressed upon her waking hours. It's sad that, while Hyrule was still a thriving kingdom, Zelda could only really experience it in disguise. The Zelda from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is already, by far, my favourite incarnation of the princess, and these memories only further solidify this. There's also the memory on Eventide Island, where Zelda recalls when she and Link visited sometime after the events of Breath of the Wild.
100 years ago, Eventide Island was filled with monsters and impossible to safely approach. Link came along to protect me, but he suddenly covered his eyes the moment we landed. Fortunately, it seems all the monsters vanished with the calamity. Regardless, when I asked him what he was doing, he said the last time he was here, he had been stripped of all his possessions when he arrived. He could have mentioned that possibility before I set foot on the shore.
Of course, when Link last stepped onto Eventide Island, the Shika monk took all of his items, weapons, materials, even clothes. So, not that we'd expect him not to be, but Link is a gentleman, covering his eyes in case Zelda found herself indecent. In Breath of the Wild, the horned statue was found just outside of Hateno village, tucked against the rock near Furley Pond. It claimed to be a dealer in life and power, and takes the form of a twisted goddess statue with horns, from which it gets its name. Apparently, it was trapped in this form by the goddess Hylia herself due to its actions. And if we revisit this same location in Tears of the Kingdom, though the statue has moved, a voice memory will provide some more information.
A strange horned statue. It suddenly spoke to me, calling itself a dealer in life and power, and I felt an overwhelming sensation, like my life was being drained away. But just as suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck the statue, toppling it into the water. That feeling... I do not think the statue had good intentions. It is best left submerged.
So this seems like a case where the goddess Hylia herself intervened to protect Zelda. Just as it does to Link, the statue started to drain a heart container from the princess, but the goddess wasn't having any of it, sending down lightning to prevent any further meddling and knocking it into the nearby pond. This explains an odd line from the horned statue, where it says it spent some time in a pond with only fish for company. We still don't know many details about this statue, but we certainly know how Hylia feels about it, in case that wasn't already clear. Other mysterious statues can be found in the depths, the bargainer statues, which appear to be the direct opposite of goddess statues. They're found directly beneath the statues of Hylia, and instead of her angelic form, they resemble hooded demons. At some point, Master Koga encountered the giant bargainer statue found beneath the Forgotten Temple and speculated on its origins.
And there's the face. You're not in the notebook. Does that mean the Zonai didn't make you? And how'd you get turned to stone anyway? Maybe the goddess did it because you did something bad. Well, bad by her standards. And if she didn't like you, I bet we would have gotten along.
While he's only guessing here, it's interesting to think that the bargainer statues may have had similar origins to the horned statue, that they once took different forms, but after falling out of favor with the goddess Hylia, were petrified into these stone figures. In Tears of the Kingdom, the bargainer statues serve to guide the spirits of Pose to the afterlife, perhaps against Hylia's will. The most interesting lore revelation in these new memories, however, can be found at the Gerudo Great Skeleton.
The immense Gerudo Great Skeleton lies here. Legends say that long ago, Hyrule was actually the bottom of a vast ocean. Considering the marine fossils that have been found across the world, I see little reason to doubt this. Except, it seems to me that there are too few fossils. Maybe sea life found roots even deeper. Maybe through chasms like the one near Barida Lookout. Maybe as far as the depths. No, I'm getting carried away.
This has been a theory since before the release of Breath of the Wild, where rock salts can be found all across the map, with an item description clarifying that it is crystallized salt from the ancient sea. But to have this idea confirmed in this voice memory is incredible. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's world was once submerged beneath a vast, continent-wide ocean. Of course, this idea calls back to the Wind Waker, where the gods were forced to drown Hyrule in a great flood to stop Ganondorf's attack. The game takes place across the scattered islands of the Great Sea, formed from the mountaintops of this lost kingdom. It's previously been said that Breath of the Wild takes place so many thousands of years after any other Zelda game that its position in the timeline, downfall, child or adult branches, doesn't really matter. So long has passed that anything and everything could have happened before it. And while this confirmation of an ancient sea could be considered very strong evidence that these games are placed in the far future of the adult timeline, perhaps long after the Great Sea has dried up, I don't think that has to be the case. It could be, but a great flood could have happened in any timeline, at any point during the incomprehensible amount of time between the traditional timeline and the era of the wild. The ambiguity is the point. Still, this is a fantastic bit of world building here, one that changes how we view the history of this kingdom. And as Zelda notes, it explains the fossils of giant, seemingly whale-like creatures found throughout the world. Not just the 3 Leviathan fossils, but countless rib cages and spines too. In the present day, these fossils are known as dragon bones, evidenced by dragon bone Maya and the dragon bone equipment wielded by monsters. But in the past, they may have been gigantic aquatic life forms, now resting on what was once the seabed. Zelda also suggests that, during the time period where Hyrule was submerged, sea life might have travelled deeper, below the surface, through the chasms and into the depths. Master Koga weighs in on this idea too.
Wow! I've seen some big skeletons in Gerudo Desert, but I don't think I've run into anything like that down here. If the surface and the depths are connected, then that means the creatures living up above could come down here, I think.
Of course, it's possible that he's referencing the dragons here, which can and do travel between the surface and the depths. But he also talks about other big skeletons in the darkness, ones that may have swam down here during the era of the flood. The depths is terrifying enough, but imagining it as the abyssal plain at the bottom of a great ocean is somehow even more unsettling. A sunken netherworld where colossal creatures swam around in the darkness. If you'd like a more in-depth analysis of the idea of a great flood happening in this world, check out these 2 videos by the Dream Shrine and Gossipgeist, and look out for a new one by Monster Maze coming soon. That's 15 voice memories that stood out to me in Tears of the Kingdom. Like I said in my previous video on the memories in Breath of the Wild, I do think that those found in this game are more interesting. Though, with a few notable exceptions, they don't massively change what we already knew about this world. Instead, these memories feel like bonus content, explaining little parts of these games' stories in further depth, providing more insight into these characters, and bridging the gulf between the stories of the Switch Zeldas. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you thought of the memories I've chosen to highlight, as well as which memories you yourself found the most interesting. And again, I need to give a big thank you to Nintendo UK for sending me out a Switch 2. If you liked this video, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.